Carol, thank you so much for coming on this episode and show of your health, your story. I wanted to start first before jumping into the big question of what is ACMOS that everyone's thinking, is your story that led you into learning about ACMOS, because you struggled with your health and that led you into searching for different solutions. So can you share your story of how this all started?
Okay, so my story goes back quite a long way to 1994, when, in fact, even the year before that, when I was starting to struggle at work. I was very stressed. I had been through quite a bit of personal stress. And then in early 1994, I found a lump in my neck, which turned out to be a Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I was at the peak of my physiotherapy career. I was in a senior position. I was actually working in the community in the UK at that time, and our health services are very pressed. It was a high stress job. And when I received my diagnosis, I received it on the Monday of the week that I got married. So I diagnosis on Monday evening, married the following Saturday.
Wow.
And then instead of a honeymoon, I had to come back to Inverness, where I live, to hospital for surgery and then for radiotherapy treatment. And I had a big range of radiotherapy. I had jaw to diaphragm and out past both axillae. It's called mantle radiotherapy. And that was a lot of exposure. I was warned to expect fatigue, but I was also told that most people go back to work 4 to 6 weeks later. So by 6 weeks, I felt I was hanging about and not living up to the expectations. So I went back to work and lasted for, I think, less than 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Reduced my hours, managed on reduced hours for another couple of weeks, and then crashed. And I was off for a couple of months then, a couple more months. So by that time, it was half a year had gone past. Went back to work again, half time, and 6 months later, really crashed. Chronic fatigue, burnout. So I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I like to do things well. And I'm not happy to work if I don't feel that I'm giving it my all. And so my attempts to do that became part of my problem. Mm. And I had chronic fatigue for between 1995 and 2002. Chronic fatigue to the extent where I almost shaved my head because it was so painful to dry my hair.
Wow.
So I just cut my hair short. I could not walk beyond 2 lampposts. And when I moved house in 5 years after the onset of the illness, I deliberately chose a house that had all the bedrooms and bathroom on one level because I couldn't walk up and down stairs. And then I had a baby. And being pregnant helped me. Doesn't help everyone, but with chronic fatigue, but it helped me. And I thought I was better, but I was still quite slow compared to the other mums. I was determined to have 2 babies, because what if I couldn't look after my child? What if I couldn't entertain him? He spent a lot of time in a playpen while I slept on the sofa. So I didn't think it was fair for my son to have no playmate. And so against all advice, I had a second baby. And I walked out of the labour ward in 2002, so 94 to 2002, feeling almost normal. And so the second pregnancy definitely changed my hormones, and everything kind of slipped back into place. But I was, by that time, very interested in whole of health. And a year later, when my children were very young, I was told that I had a risk of a secondary cancer anywhere within this big area of radiation that I had had. The highest risk being breast cancer, a 1 in 4 risk, and the esophageal, lungs, anything, throat, tongue. So that really was frightening. It was frightening for me. It was frightening for my husband. And I considered having a mastectomy, bilateral, prophylactically, but I didn't think I would feel like me anymore. And so I didn't choose that path. What I did do was start looking more proactively at health, looking for some way to protect my health in order to protect my family. That was my primary driver at that time, was to protect my own health and my family's health. And I had done some acupuncture and some Chinese medicine during my physical therapy career. And I loved Chinese medicine. And so I started looking at degree courses. You know, I live in the sticks, in the wilderness of the Highlands of Scotland. And to take 4 weekends a month to go to London to do a course while you have 2 toddlers is not practical. So I kept looking, and I came across at a Mind, Body, Spirit fair, a friend of mine from the Action for ME Pregnancy Network, actually, who had taken up ACMOS. And she handed me her antenna and said, there's a course in London next month. Ask with the antenna if you should do it. And I was blown away. I'd never seen one of these before. I said, no, what are you talking about? I've never dowsed. I've never, okay, right. Should I do the course in London next month? And the antenna moved for me straight away. And so I did it. And here we are.
And here we are. I mean, it's
15 years.
Right. It's a story that reminds me sort of my father's and how he came about ACMOS, because it was just that kind of a friend of his, Tom Grady at the time in Arizona that he knew, said, hey, I got this, guy out in Paris that wants to teach something about energy medicine. He uses this wand and does all this stuff. It sounds good. My father said, okay, why not? And, my father was conventionally trained. So even kind of being open to this, like you said, basically an antenna, what is this that I'm using? It's not some kind of big device or something that you put your hand on and reads out everything. It's literally like a dowsing rod. We'll get into it more because it's not. But, just taking that leap of faith and going in that direction. It's almost as the universe kind of provided for you as well. It's like, you're looking for solutions. Here's an amazing solution. And the strange part of it is, as we know, it's such it's not talked about too much. The ACMOS method itself is a genius method that just hasn't, gotten really into the mainstream, let's say, as acupuncture has. So I want to now jump into the $1 million question. Because you found it this way. I mean, my father found it, and some practitioners have found it through these serendipitous occasions and events. What is ACMOS method? What's the simplest term? How do you describe it to people?
The simplest way to describe it is information medicine. Tuning into the information that's held within the body, interpreting it. That's a really key part of it, because if someone understands what's happening in their body, then their brain already starts to heal them. Because the biggest problem we have is the fear of what's wrong with me. So if someone can explain to you what's happening inside your cells, your systems, whatever comes up, because there is no straightforward path through ACMOS. There is only the route that person chooses. And so we need to get the information from them. So we question the body and we bring that information into the session. And then we not only question and find out what's going on and explain it, but then we resolve where there is dissonance or disharmony, where the wave signals of our body are interacting in a way that disturbs our overall quality, with the wave signals in our surroundings, in the food we eat, in the things we wear, the people we communicate with, the people we work with. Where there is disharmony, ACMOS brings harmony.
Right. And I mean, it all starts with information and energy. And we all have to understand every single disease, any single ailment really starts on an informational and energetic, very subtle. And then it turns into biochemistry. So, that's where people, I think, see it wrong, because they only see everything on the physical and they wait for those biochemical results. But at the core of it all, way before all of that happens, you have to tap into information, energy, and that's what ACMOS, I believe, does so well. And one of the things that I know it utilizes the Lekker instrument because it reads both sides of the energy, right? Resource and management.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit about the Lekker instrument, because it is such a vital piece of ACMOS itself, what it is and kind of the benefits of utilizing this instrument rather than something else out there?
Okay. Well, for me, the beauty is in its simplicity. And it's a loop of wire, quite simple.
Yeah.
Been around for over 100 years in various sizes and in various guises. But put simply, the way I describe it to people that they understand best is in the old-fashioned radio sets in our cars, we used to turn the dial and the cursor would move along. And when it hit the station, the music came out. Yeah. So we were tuning in with a wavelength. So the antenna tunes in with wavelengths. And so by knowing what the lengths mean, we can interpret the information. And so we tune in with the various stations in the body. We have 12 for our connection with cosmic force being primarily the energy of sunlight. We have life on Earth because we are the exact right position from the sun with the right distance. At the poles of our Earth, there is less life because it's too cold. At the very center of our Earth, there are deserts because it's too hot. So we live in a bandwidth that suits life, not only human life, but animal life, insect life, cellular life at all levels. And so being able to tune into those living signals, so the other important one is the signal of the Earth, which is 8 on our antenna. We tune in with the Earth connection. Then we have, in Chinese medicine terms, yin and yang. Because yang is radiant, hot, fast, and all ever expanding. And yin is calming, cooling, drawing in, gathering, calming, anti-inflammatory. So we have diseases which are hot. And most of the symptomatic diseases, what we learned first in college, when I was at school learning physical therapy, calor, dolor, rubor, the Latin for the different color, the redness, heat, pain, inflammation. But those are yang symptoms. And we also have illnesses which are yin in nature. So we have illnesses where we get thickness or stagnation, where there's a lack of movement of energy, there's a loss of flow, and the pattern changes, but because it's happening in that yin way, gathering inwards, then there are no symptoms on the outside until there's a restriction of flow, example in a blood vessel. There's a stone formed that then blocks something that creates pain, kidney stones or gallbladder stones, or ultimately there are changes in our cellular biology and cancers forming in our body, which don't give symptoms until they're big enough to restrict something else and press on things. And so those yin symptoms are the hidden side of the physical health that are missed until they're big problems.
And the beauty of that is you could utilize this system for preventive measures, for real, what I would consider real early detection in a sense, before it becomes pathological, right? That's part of the beauty of ACMOS is you're picking up on those subtle, causes of disease that will turn into it in time. How long that is really how well your body can compensate, right?
Absolutely. We can hold that energy for a period of time. We balance the energy, but we're not balanced forever because life's always throwing other things at us. It throws things like viruses in our environment, or it throws weather patterns at us, changes in heat. This last year, there's been a lot of challenges going on in the environment for people. And so I don't teach people to diagnose with the antenna. When we're in the ACMOS method, we're looking at picking up the subtle signs very early on before they're symptomatic, or dealing with the symptoms, but getting to the underpinning and underlying causes. And those can be in our inherited patterns. They can be in our environmental patterns, but signals create patterns and patterns create change. So positive signals create positive change and negative signals create negative change. And to me, it's about maintaining our ability to have the energy to keep our patterns at bay for as long as we can.
Right.
And that's why with balancing, it is a recurring process where someone comes and has an energy balance. They might come again in maybe 6 to 8 weeks after the first session, and then maybe 12 weeks later. And the gaps get longer and longer, provided that person's life doesn't hit a big rock. If they hit a big rock in their life, they lose their job, they become, a relationship breaks down, then they may need balancing more frequently again until they regain control of their own energy circulation. So we're looking at optimizing health, optimizing the person's natural tendencies and abilities, not pushing them to do something their body doesn't have the energy for, creating therapeutic reactions where people have a sort of crisis event after a healing. With ACMOS, you don't tend to get that because the body asks and we send. Right.
There's no guessing in ACMOS. It's very precise. And I know Rennie Nakashan, who created this, was an engineer. He was an engineer's mind. He did things step by step, and this protocol, so to say, that you can go through within the system is very meticulous. And you go through and you ask the body and the body answers, and then you go through, okay, you find this, right? You find it's, let's say, an environmental aggressor that is impacting the balance of energy in your body at this point. And then you utilize certain, steps within the system to correct that, to rectify those balances. So can you talk us through an energy balancing session and how that would look for anyone listening saying, I'm not really getting this. Is this like acupuncture where you're kind of putting things into certain, points and trying to correct the blockages that way? Or is it something else? Maybe you could talk us through that.
Okay, well, it is a bit like acupuncture because we are putting something into the points in order to correct blockages, but we're not using needles.
Right.
So we're using, and this is the amazing thing about ACMOS, is we're using the frequency and the wavelengths, the signals of natural products, but we apply them into acupuncture points, and we do it with the antenna so that one remedy, or we call them harmonies, it's about restoring harmony in the body, one harmony becomes up to about 20 different options rather than just one, simply by changing the wavelength. So you change the wavelength, you change the interference pattern between the antenna and the remedy, you put it into the acupuncture point, or actually we don't put it in, the person takes it in. Mm-hmm. So they absorb that signal into that point. So we have the information about which settings they need to absorb from the antenna. We have the information about what the origin of their problem is from the remedy. And we have the information about the location from where it's going because we know where the acupuncture is. So you put those 3 bits of information together and you start to build up a picture. And when I'm teaching, then I use the term a dot-to-dot picture. I don't know if that's a UK term, but it's a picture which the kids have in their books, and it has little numbers and dots, and you join the dots together until the picture emerges. Mm-hmm. And with an ACMOS balance, that's what happens. A picture emerges as to the priorities of that person's health at that point in time and the underlying factors. And so I spend more time than perhaps a medical doctor would have time to do because I'm a therapist and I can choose my session length. So I spend time talking to people and engaging them in their story because I believe that's an important part of the equation. And so I don't act as a technician only, I act as a technician, and my skill is in interpreting and making it very real for that person.
It's really an amazing thing to watch someone be balanced. It is kind of this artistic thing going on, right? And when you say that, you're utilizing natural products and frequencies found in nature. So it's things like herbal, homeopathic, minerals, all in this valise, as they call it, the ACMOS valise, which I'm sure you have back. Yeah, wonderfully designed in little slots for all these different, hundreds of different frequencies, basically, that you can then transmit into certain areas of the body to then clear that energetic blockage, right?
Now, clear the blockage and reestablish flow.
Right. Talk a little bit about that valise, and basically you would go about going through this valise, trying to find the appropriate frequency to unblock, correct? So what's in the valise? I know I mentioned a few things, but maybe you could go a little bit further to show the kind of the array of options that are in the valise.
Okay. So top of the tree in ACMOS are the essential oils. And the essential oils, we have 24. There's a cedar essential oil here. And we just scan the oils with the antenna to see which responds. That then tells us about the nature of the problem. So cedar can be used for infections. I have loads of information about what the oils do and don't do. It's a massive system. So I have books that I am able to quickly reference throughout the session so that I can give the best explanation as I go. I can't remember it all because, I'm human. So we have essential oils, we have minerals. Both of those work to contain our natural tendencies when they go off the rails. So we inherit our strengths and our weaknesses from our family tree. And if we go back far enough down that family tree, then we inherit from the fact that we're human, our racial memories, traumatic memories from our past are passed down through the generations. It's absolutely known nowadays. The science of epigenetics is proving this, and that there are changes in the DNA because of trauma. And so what we are looking at is reestablishing that person's energy so that they have the capacity to control those tendencies. So we have essential oils and minerals for inherited tendencies. The oils, the problems coming from inside of you. The minerals, the problems coming from outside of you. So there's an external stressor. We have trace elements, which we use for hormonal issues. We have herbs that we use for nutritional issues or replacing if there's a lack in the diet. We have herbal complexes, which are herbs grown at certain times of the year. So they go with the seasons. And if you know about the 5 elements of Chinese medicine, then we rebalance the element through the seasonal harmonies. So for this one, we have ACMO, which is French for ACMO water. Balances the water element, the bladder and the kidney circuits, the primary emotion of fear, fear for safety and well-being. We have also complexes which balance, they're just called yin and yang. So straightforward enough. One raises the energy, gives you more yang, and one sedates or calms the energy, which brings you into a more yin state. We have numerous homeopathics. We have 3 trays of homeopathics. So we have homeopathic remedies for hormonal issues. We have remedies for emotional issues, because the biggest, we call it the second reducer of energy. The first reducer is your inherited tendencies. The second reducer is the things that happen to you in life. If you're exposed to trauma or stress or aggression in your life, then that kind of smudges or reduces the flame of your vital spark. So I'll give you my analogy that I give my clients, is that we come into life with a vital spark. And if you imagine around that flame, we have an old gas lamp. So the quality of your genetic programming is whether that gas lamp is clear glass and strong, or whether it's cracked and damaged before you start. And then emotional things happen, we start to get smudges on the glass. And so our quality of our light, the volume of our energy that gets out for our cellular functioning and our normal activity reduces, because it has to get through these filters, which are quashing the quality of our energy. So with an ACMOS balance, we're cleaning the filters by removing negative memories. We're strengthening the glass by using essential oils or minerals to improve your control of your hereditary. And we are increasing the size of that vital spark by giving you more energy at your disposal to run your own body. All we do is get you into a better place to run your own body with your own energy and optimize it so that there's as much as possible to use and it's directed where it needs to go.
Yeah, it's a wonderful analogy. And really, every single medical treatment that is out there should aim to get the body back to doing what it needs to do, not forcing it, but actually providing information, energy that allows the body to function properly again as it should in its natural state. A lot of people think disease is our natural state, but I think we both argue that. And I think ACMOS shows us that when you give it the proper information, utilize things in valise and transmit those frequencies back to clear blockages, suddenly information flows easier, energy flows within the body, and you could correct so many things, right? So really quickly, before I jump back into some of the ACMOS, pieces and different even instruments that are used within it, what are some of the things that you are seeing that you're using ACMOS on? Is there a specific set of conditions or symptoms that you're using, or is it everyone can basically, benefit from an ACMOS energy balancing?
Yeah, everyone can benefit.
Right.
But which groups of symptoms benefit fastest? If something is hardwired and ingrained in your physical structure, it's a bit harder to shift. It takes more time for your body, once it's running its energy more efficiently, to work that problem through and let go of it. If something is in your psychology, then it's easier to shift it very quickly. So things like anxiety tend to shift much more quickly than someone with inflammatory joint disease. But I've had some great results with people with inflammatory joint disease. And I've had great results in people changing the vascularity of their limbs. But it does require keeping on top of that, because once you have an established structural problem, one balance is not going to cure it. It's an ongoing process, maximizing, making sure the energy keeps flowing in the right direction, keeps homeostasis. The body's a self-correcting organism. Given the chance to do that, it does it very well. I work with people with all sorts of problems. One of my early clients was someone who came and said, I don't know what to do. Somebody suggested I come and see you because my house is messy. And I sat and thought, well, okay, why is your house messy? Well, I don't know. I just can't keep on top of things. It's untidy. There's stuff everywhere. It just gets me down. And so there was an element of mood disorder underneath the fact that the house was messy. But when we went into the balance, what emerged very clearly was that the root cause was grief. The house was full of mum's belongings and auntie's belongings who had both passed away within a reasonably short period of time of each other. And this lady was just overwhelmed. And one might think, okay, well, she just needed someone to tell her she was overwhelmed. But we worked at a much deeper level, and her body revealed her story in a way that she could correct her energy so that she had the energy to go home and sort out her stuff. And she did. She had a great outcome, and she was delighted. And she that was what she wanted from ACMOS. So some people come until they have resolved the issue that they want to deal with, and others come longer term. Another issue that I've had a lot of success with is overuse of alcohol. I know of practitioners who work with people who take drugs. And so it's not magic. And as with any therapy, that therapeutic rapport is really important. Gain the trust of the person that you're working with, professional, so that they understand they're in safe hands, because it's a bit different to have an ACMOS balance session. People haven't seen it before. Some would call it woo-woo. And particularly within the medical professions, there is a lot of discouragement from pursuing the energetic lines of approach because they're not proven by randomized, controlled, double-blind trials. But ACMOS is so personalized. That type of study just wouldn't work because there is no one route. There is only your route when you go into the session. So your route might be into your energy body needing to have its problems balanced first. And so we balance the energy body with one of our remedies. And then you might ask me to balance a particular region of the body that has been disrupting everything else. And so I might go and discover that we need to balance your lungs or your kidneys or your unconscious brain or your hormonal system. So the questioning process leads us to the problem that needs to be resolved first. And the solutions, we have two solutions, or two big solutions. The first, the remedies, of which there are hundreds in the master kit, and stimulation of acupuncture points. So we stimulate the points with the antenna, with light, with an electrical stimulator, or with fingers. Everybody has those.
Right. Well, talk about those devices, because I know it's not just the valise itself with the natural elements and the Lekker instrument. Rennie constructed many kind of advanced devices as well to be very specific. And, again, I understand that watching an ACMOS seems woo-woo at times. You could say what's going on. I could always say that a lot of medical sciences as it is right now is a little bit just kind of woo-woo too, because we're just throwing out guesses half the time based on biochemistry, which is insanely hard to guess. And that's why I think you don't have great outcomes in the conventional approach with chronic disease. But this is incredibly scientifically backed. Everything in this is very, very well documented in a sense. And Rennie did it in such a precise way that he utilized different instruments rather than just, going with a guessing sort of approach, and being very specific on frequency, light, exactly where it's placed to clear. So go into those devices a little bit with the acmodermal and also the light therapy that's used within it.
Okay, so practice has changed significantly over the last year and a half. And so my stuff's all packed away because I'm about to move house.
No
so
worries.
I don't have it to show you, unfortunately. I might have a light pen. Oh yeah, there we go. Excuse me. There we go. So we can stimulate with light with this. This is a ACMOS-like pen. It passes light, full spectrum light, or light which has a blue-green tone or a red tone for yin or yang, through a quartz crystal. And that can be used to stimulate acupuncture points, both on the person, and this is where it sounds really woo-woo, we can use this at distance as well. So the person does not need to be in the room with you. So we'll get into that because that is far down the path for some people.
Yes.
Rennie started by measuring everything. He created a biofeedback unit, which is basically a resistance meter or an ohm meter, and measured the resistance through the circuits or the meridians with this ohm meter. How much percent of the signal sent, this tiny current sent, reached the other end. And he found that was very sensitive to change. And that's one of the criticisms of the medical scientists, is that it's too easy to change it. But if you know that it's very sensitive to change and you're aware of that, then you can put something into the hand and then test whether it makes a change immediately. And you can repeat that process to prove that your hypothesis is correct.
Isn't it like an advanced form of kinesiology, using actual kind of measurements rather than just a response in your muscle being weaker or stronger? Here, he actually measured the response on something that showed whether it's 90, 80, 70, and showed the response. Yeah. So I always found it fascinating, and I love kinesiology and muscle testing, but this was kind of proving it, showing me on a meter almost what was happening as you introduce something into someone's field.
Yeah, so it's a quick demonstrator of change in a way that it's an instrument rather than a perception of a tester. So it doesn't rely on tester ability. And so we do that when we see people in face-to-face. But I haven't done any ACMOS face-to-face for the last year and a half. So the other instrument that we use when we're face-to-face, which is really popular with physios, physical therapists, with chiropractors, osteopaths, acupuncturists, people who are used to finding and stimulating acupuncture points. It's an electrical stimulator of acupuncture points, very fine-tuned, a square wave pulse, and it's a point locator, very accurate. And I learned acupuncture long before I learned ACMOS, and we were taught to find the point with our thumb and feel around for the dippiest bit in the middle of the dip and put the needle in there. And the points do have a spectrum of effect. But if you can zero in absolutely 100% on that point, then the current can flow much more easily because the skin resistance is less at that point. So you don't need to pierce the skin. One of the factors that acupuncturists use is by piercing the skin, there's no impedance to that signal through the needle. So they breach the skin to get rid of the impedance problem. So we find the point of the least impedance to get the current through. But by not actually breaching the skin, we don't need to have specialist skills or deal with sharps or any of those things. And a number of my colleagues who were acupuncturists first now exclusively use the acmodermal. I haven't used needles for years. I will use my acmodermal, which is my stimulator, in place of needles.
Really quickly, because I've seen this a lot from traditional acupuncturists that see this quickly and say, no, that's not as good as acupuncture, right? Because people have that attachment. They've been trained, they've been told it's the best form of energy medicine. I think anyone that goes through very special training kind of holds an attachment a little bit to it. How would you compare acupuncture and ACMOS method?
Well, Dr. Rennie did have some studies done at the School of Acupuncture in Paris, where he had the teaching staff do a blinded comparison, or the recipients were blinded. That can't have been blinded because you know if there's a needle or there's not. So he did a comparative study using the teaching staff of the School of Acupuncture in Paris, and they compared pulse diagnosis with the biofeedback, and found that the results were comparable, if not slightly better, for the biofeedback in terms of inter-user accuracy, because pulse diagnosis so much relies on the skill of the practitioner. And they did the same with the electroacupuncture stimulator, the acmodermal, comparing it with needles for efficacy. And again, the results were comparable, even erring on the side. But despite that, and despite being written up by a gentleman called André Lebarbier, who was the head of the school at that time, the school still taught acupuncture.
Right.
So we are attached to the things that we hold dear. We are attached to the things that we learn. And if we learn them from someone who's dear to us. So for me, I'm very attached to ACMOS. I had a very strong connection with Dr. Rennie. And so ACMOS is part of my heart and soul now. And that's why I want to share that knowledge with as many people as possible. Yeah.
And I think my father, who also trained in acupuncture and went and learned in China, I remember going there in the late 80s and being the only blonde-haired kid in China at the time, running around, and everyone thought I was in a boy band then. But I remember him learning about this and learning about ACMOS years later and saying it was a more scientific type of approach, at least for him, where he could measure it. He also found it easier to do on patients rather than find all the needles, have them lay there. He could balance someone in a few minutes, at least get them somewhat balanced and in a place where the correct information is flowing. And then he could do other treatments that would have a more pronounced effect as well. And so I think it lends itself. It's a different tool than acupuncture. It's a more advanced, I would say, way of doing something that's thousands of years old. But again, both are very, very useful. So it's not an either or, right? I think people think that a lot.
Cautious about saying things are more advanced. It's different.
It's different. I mean more advanced in that it's utilizing technology a little bit more. It's utilizing more of an engineering approach, than the true just artistry of acupuncture, you could say. But yet it still requires artistry in it. It requires someone truly trained in it. So talk a little bit about training, and talk about also, I'd love to hear your time training with the creator, Rennie Nakashan. And Rennie is now gone, unfortunately, but my father learned from. What is training like, and what was it like to train under Rennie?
Training is an amazing kind of mind-blowing experience, really, for me.
It's not simple. I know that.
Yeah. I went along on the basis of my friend handing me her antenna and suggesting I should go. And I knew there was Chinese medicine in it, and that I wanted to learn how to improve my own health. So I went along and I sat there. I was a terrible student. I asked loads of questions and said things like, but how can you make that statement? But how can you say that?
I'm sure Renee loved that.
Prove it. And it wasn't actually with Rennie at that stage. I trained with Keith Parker.
Okay.
And then when I finished my level 4, I went straight after the exam up to Paris for the international conference. And that was the first time that I met Rennie Nakashian himself. And I was just amazed by how intuitive he was, how simple he made it. And even that first visit, I thought to myself, I'm going to teach this. Mm. And I think it's because I have my physical therapy background. We used to cover a lot of physics in our training because we used to use a lot of machines. And so it made sense to me. Rennie was an engineer. I was a body mechanic. And so we were on the same wavelength of how we thought about the body. But I just sat there. I've got books and books. I've been sorting things out here, and I found every single note I've taken at every conference I've been to. I went to every conference that was available for years. I came home and I worked on clients, worked on family and friends first. You hone your skills first before you start charging and trying things out on people. And then I started working with clients. I worked with clients for 5 years, and then I went back to Paris and I redid the whole of the training again with a different teacher, this time with Susie London and with Rennie himself. And then from the following year, I went back as a teacher and I taught with Dr. Rennie. But at that time, he did most of the teaching and I sat at his feet, writing down everything that he said and just absorbing all of the pearls of wisdom. I always called them pearls of wisdom. And I used to get the students to write up pearls and we'd stick them around the wall of the class, the things when the penny dropped, because it's kind of a language all of its own, ACMOS. So once you pick up the words and the phrases and the numbers, then you can speak the language. And the first time I taught myself, I said, I'm going to teach you to speak ACMOS, because it is a language, it is a communication. And so I just sat at Rennie's feet. I stayed with the family. I still stay with Nicole, Rennie's wife, when I go to Paris. And I'm still regularly in touch with the family. And so while we were in the evenings, we would always be in his office chatting about things, new ideas, trying out different things. I would balance him, he would balance me. And it was I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, with the right skill set, I guess, and the right level of passion to be able to act like a sponge and absorb from the master himself in action. And so we just kind of changed over the years from him doing most of the teaching to me doing most of the teaching.
Yeah. Rennie is a remarkable man. I was fortunate enough to meet him as well. And, what I realized is he built almost this own metaverse. As you say, it was a language, but it was a whole system with all these different pieces of it that really understood how the body works, taking in traditional Chinese medicine, taking in modern mechanics and molecular biology, all of these different things, and applying it and creating this incredible system that is a metaverse in itself. And like you said, it takes a while. We've done trainings as well, and I've been to those trainings, and one is not enough. You can't just show up for a weekend. I think that's what people think. Okay, one weekend I'll show up for a seminar and then I'll be good. No, this is a skill set. Medical school doesn't take a weekend either. It's not a seminar. And in many ways, this is kind of a secondary medical school to learn this metaverse. Now, you're doing a lot of the training now, and you're doing these virtual types of training. You have a lot. Talk a little bit about that, about the new set of training, how you are now teaching this to a new set of practitioners. Now that Renee's gone, you talked about passing the baton over. Go a little bit into the training and what that entails.
Well, we have various levels of training.
Yeah.
And those levels of training are suitable for different people. So we have a basic antenna training package, which I sell with the antenna itself, so that you don't receive an antenna and then have no clue what to do with it. Okay, so we need a little bit of assistance at that point, just to learn what the numbers mean, the basic structure of the numbers, a little bit of history, and then some exercises, and it just follows a format of this is what you do then. And there's a little protocol that comes with that as well for antenna users. So these are people who would like to sort of scratch the surface. They're interested, but they've got plenty of other things that they're interested in until they get one.
It's an amazing skill set,
and
right?
then their interest goes, okay, I want to do the next level.
Well, to just interject really quickly, because ACMOS is a system itself, but utilizing a Lekker instrument to just qualitatively test things. And that's where people have to realize this Lekker instrument is so special in a way that you could use it within the system to do ACMOS energy balancing. That is a therapy, so to say. That is a system of therapeutically enhancing, the energy, the vitality of a person. You could also use the Lekker instrument to just test products, to test anything really, and see if it has certain frequencies that are good for the human body or not. And I found that to be probably its biggest usage alone of the Lekker instrument is to just go up to any supplement and be able to test, is this even good for the human body or not? And you'd be really shocked to learn how many products out there that say they're healthy and say they're to help you heal, that are actually probably more of a poison to you on an energetic level, meaning they might have toxicity in it that would hamper, they may have something else that would do it. So I find the Lekker instrument to be incredibly useful just in that term, even outside of the ACMOS method.
Yeah, so you can do that. You can do measuring, but you can also change the quality of an environment, or you can change the quality of a product with an antenna, because an antenna is a sender and a receiver.
Yes.
So when you're testing, you're receiving. When you're changing things, you're sending information to that product, raising its quality or its vibration, making it more adaptable. You can also test with people whether that product is suitable for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because
you have compatibility testing.
There are millions of products. Which ones should we take? And there are people who believe in that you need lots of products. And there are people who believe that most of what you need is inside your body, and your liver will break down and rebuild what it needs from the building blocks of your diet. And so a belief system creeps in here as well. But using the antenna, you can shortcut all of that. You can save yourself a fortune on buying loads of products. When I had chronic fatigue, I had a cupboard full of supplements, none of which made the slightest bit of difference. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we need to take a product for a period of time. Just like if you want to repair a bridge, you need to take the materials to build the bridge to the site and build. So I see the yang side of the energy system as being like a working building site, where we need the energy, we need the tools, we need the blocks or the bricks to build the building or repair its foundations. And the yin side I see as being like the architect. Mm. And if the architect is on site, the building is built as it should be. If the architect is not connected, then the builders will just build any old how. So your body will repair itself, higgledy-piggledy, if you don't put information in. And one of the things that I've seen change throughout my career in the last 30 years is the way that we treat fractures. Because fractures used to be non-weight bearing for much longer. But now we know that a bit of weight, so a bit of the natural expectation and pattern and information of load bearing through that fracture will cause it to rebuild and align along the lines of stress, instead of having to heal first and then remodel to the lines of stress, which is the way we used to do it. Of course, varies fracture to fracture, but that's just an example. The body's always changing, remodeling. Our cells are changing over by billions every day. And the biggest changeover is in the red blood cells. Red blood cells carry oxygen and carbon dioxide, but they carry information as well. The blood carries the information around the whole body to all the cells. The quality of the blood's important.
And that's what
soapboxes.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons also I think ACMOS is so fascinating. It's not a diagnostic measure at any point, but it is an evaluation of where you are right now. People don't realize whenever you get a lab test, you're waiting several weeks. So that's a snapshot of what you were then. By the time you get your results, you're a total different person. You could be a totally different results if you took your blood again. So it gives you a snapshot, which is fine. Snapshots are nice. That is some information. but it's not who you are right now. And it's not who you are, in a week from now. ACMOS, you could quickly evaluate just the information, energy side, and see where you are now, and then see where you are in a week also. So it's a beautiful tool for any practitioner. And I do know it's a way of measuring how treatment is coming along. Are you balanced still? Are things going well? Why are you unbalanced? What happened, right? What got us to here? And that allows the practitioner to uncover more information about the patient or the client at that time. So it's a wonderful tool in analysis of a patient's health in real time. And that's a great part.
And real-time measurements at the start, and real-time measurements an hour later.
Right.
Not a week later or a month later, but with the structural body, sometimes the change will happen more gradually over that time. But for the energetic shift, it happens now.
And that's the beauty of energy. It happens like that. Energy is so quick. And if you could get it back, remarkable things can happen. And it's not to say that suddenly you'll feel that, but you will feel a shift normally. Sometimes it's nuanced, sometimes it's powerful. But then everything starts to align again. The cells could work again. So it slowly brings you out of it. That takes a little more time. But with energy, it's very, very quick. And speaking of very quick, it's also not always, a parameter that would stop it isn't distance. And, you know where I'm going with this. The idea of remote balancing, of balancing someone from afar. The idea is quite foreign to most people, meaning how can I have medical treatment if I'm not even in the doctor's office, right? How can you be treating me? But when you talk about energy, it's a little different. And again, science has proven this. I'm sure you've heard about the studies and tests they did at the Canary Islands, sending packets of information, seamlessly at the same exact time, hundreds of miles apart, sending it right there, and they were there. So when you talk about energy, you have to kind of forego some of these physical, restrictions of the world we see, because we live in an energetic world where things can happen simultaneously. So talk a little bit about ACMOS remote balancing and how that works, how you can impact someone and their energy from afar.
Well, I like analogies. I like to speak in metaphors. They're simple. People understand them. So my analogy for distance comparison is to say, okay, if you phone somebody in New Zealand from the UK, you speak to them immediately. That's just a signal being bounced around the earth, and it arrives instantaneously. When I lived in Australia, which was 25 years ago, there was a delay in the phone call because you had to go in the wire, and it was still a signal going along a wire, but it had to go hardwired rather than through the atmosphere. So it's faster through the ether than it is through a wire. Another really simple concept is if somebody in NASA types into the computer keyboard and wants to change the position of a satellite, they don't send a rocket up to push the satellite. It happens instantaneously. The signals are interpreted, and people find it really easy, particularly this generation, to understand that you can contact people through a device. An electronic device, preferably, because they understand that better. But we are an electronic device. We're talking about biophysics. So, provided that you have had some way of linking your energy, you can communicate with that person's energy very easily across the whole distance of the planet. So when I balance someone at distance, if I know them, I don't need any more information than their name because I have that energetic connection. I balance some people on Zoom, as we were doing just now, because we're connecting. You can see my body language, I can see yours. We have all that interaction going on, as well as the words that we're using. If someone doesn't, usually when I balance people in the United States from the UK, I balance them in the morning here while they sleep in the US, because you're in a very yin and receptive state as you sleep, and life isn't getting in the way. And so that's my choice. So I either speak to someone like this just for a few minutes, just to get a connection established, or if doesn't work out for whatever reason, I ask for a video clip, because I like to see body language and to hear the tone of voice, and to just you pick up so much just from that interaction. And then I'll have a screenshot and work with a photograph. You don't need it. You absolutely do not need any of it. When I started working with ACMOS and did my first website, I ran a questionnaire through my website, which was based on the 5 elements. 3 questions, very simple. Send me this information, I'll send you an energy reading. I didn't like it. A marketing guy twisted my arm to say this is a good way to show people how it works. The problem was it was so accurate. I could pick up so much information from the people's energy and feed it back to them that it freaked people out. And so I said, no, I don't like that. It's gimmicky. I'm not going to have that on my website anymore. I've proven it to myself as much as I need to as a new practitioner that connection is easily established. It can be established by an email or a phone call as well. But my preference is to have a multi-dimensional interaction with that person. And when I do the balances nowadays, because I'm doing so many balances online, and because I work with a group of physiotherapists in energy medicine, we have a special interest group where we've been working for the last 30 years in energetic techniques to do with the body, more hands-on or hands-off, not using the antenna. But I sense and feel what's happening with the energy as well. I feel it in my body. And if someone's working with me on Zoom, or if they're not there, I'll record it. Then I start using myofascial release by positioning and posture throughout the session as well. So we're just expanding into other areas as we realize how easy it is to do.
Yeah. It's a remarkably hard one concept, I think, for some to pick up on, but it absolutely, if you've ever had a remote session, you could tell at times, and you could see how much energy really has an influence on us regardless of the distance of it. Now, another one that I sometimes have had difficulty even explaining, and maybe you could help me here, is the Acmogram. Because I've noticed that recently, at least at the center, more and more people require Acmogram. And it could be because of different environmental aggressors that are happening, things like 5G, extra stressors out in the environment, everything. But we've been utilizing them a little bit more, and handing someone a piece of paper with some colors on it and, different little symbols on it and saying, place this onto your body or even in your environment or anything, and that'll help, is difficult for people to kind of grasp and say, why am I taping a little piece of paper to my chest, right? So
I love this question.
No, I want to hear the answer, because I'm always like, I don't know, just do it. Just put it on, like tape it there and you'll feel better, right? But tell us about the Acmogram a little bit and the kind of why Rennie constructed this and what it does.
Well, the Acmogram opens up a whole kaleidoscope of other frequencies. We have 400 multiplied by the 20 or so stations on the antenna. So we have lots of answers. But when you have the Acmogram, they're based on the symbols of the I Ching from Chinese medicine, been used for thousands of years. So we've got 64 basic layouts of the lines. And we've got dots or dashes, if you want to look at it that way. We've got a code in that. And when you start adding in then colors, and we've recently added more different permutations for the colors, then you change the vibration of that symbol. So we now have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of possibilities to fine-tune the information exactly for what that person needs at that point in time. So if you need an essential oil, that's one of 24 lines of information in the human body. The essential oil, therefore, is quite broad. If we then need to, in addition to doing an energy transfer with the antenna of the oil into an acupuncture point, to support that over a period of time, the person in the old days would carry the oil or put the oil on their skin. But nowadays, there is the Acmogram symbols are used whenever we need to place for a period of time. And the best way to describe an Acmogram, it's like a barcode. If you go to the supermarket and you do your shopping with a scanner, you scan the barcode, it gives you the date, the product, whether it's on special offer, whether you should buy 2 more so you get it for a cheaper price, the weight. It changes every time there's an offer made. That information changes. We accept that barcodes carry information. or QR codes.
Mm-hmm.
They're black and white. They carry information. Light, a rainbow, is a splitting of the light into its different colors of the electromagnetic frequency. So you add color into your QR code or your barcode or your I Ching symbol, and you're changing its wavelength because the different colors have different wavelengths. And so we're giving the body information in a way that we can't perhaps understand with our minds, but our bodies don't talk with the same language. They just respond to signals. And so you put the signal on the place where it needs to go. So we have information from the I Ching about what that symbol may be related to. We have information from the colors and the 5 elements, what does the color mean? The active lines or the background colors. And then we have the point where it needs to go, which gives us more information again. So you're always gathering. I just love the storytelling, that when you collect all the information and you put it together, and it often fits, tack, 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 throughout the balance process. They might have had 4 interventions or changes that you've made, and 1, 2, 3 of them are for the same problem from a completely different tangent. And so you can say then, well, the hub of your problem that we've been working with today is this, whether it's a relationship issue underlying your ability to maintain your emotional homeostasis, or whether it's a liver issue, you're not cleaning your blood well enough, your body is chalked up with toxins, you're not being efficient in your elimination. You know, the choice is vast. I could give you 100 different examples, but I love the acmograms because they're so specific. Mm. It's like taking the oil and then coding in and targeting in exactly with the information that's needed. Very specific, right where it's needed. And I have fantastic results. When I learned about acmograms, I was not ever going to use them. I will never give anybody a bit of colored paper with lines on it, because that's nonsense. And this was me 15 years ago. I will never balance anyone at distance, because I don't see how that's possible. 2 of the most powerful tools that we have.
Carol, that was me a couple of years ago to my father. I was like, stop giving them pieces of paper and stop doing things from a distance. This isn't medicine. And then I saw what it was doing, and I learned, like you did, about the value and importance of information, how simple it could be. And again, think about this. Someone could walk over and whisper one little thing of information in your ear that could change your life forever. If it's the right piece of information, if it's really something there that can make you just go break down or make you the happiest person, right? Think about that. That's just information. That's it. They did nothing. There's nothing physical. It was literally, words, vibrations in your ear transitioned in there. Your brain picked it up and you changed because of that.
Yeah.
This is very similar, right?
Yeah. And we're always feeding ourselves information.
Oh, yeah.
And our thoughts and our patterns.
Not the best information, but
not the best information. No, if we can manage that, then we can change our health. It changes our well-being and our state of health. So if we can be more specific, and if we can find the information the person hasn't been able to find for themselves. Most people who used to come to me for ACMOS were people who were at the end of the line. They'd seen almost everybody in town. They didn't know where else to go. And the statement, the line that I hear most often it's one I use myself and from students and from clients, is ACMOS changed my life. Mm. It changes how you look at things, it changes the patterns that you see around you. You recognize patterns within yourself, and it just opens up your mind to a huge level of possibilities. Possibility. We only need to be open to it, and that it's like dominoes.
I mean, I've heard the same thing, from those that have learned ACMOS. It completely changes the game. And we have MDs that were very, physical, conventional minded, that learned this and really accepted it and started applying it. And they said it was a game changer for them. Suddenly the patient, it was the missing piece in many, circumstances with the patient. You could do all you want in the physical body. If you're not at all addressing the kind of energetic informational side, you're missing such a big piece where it all starts. So you're getting everything downstream and throwing in the chemicals that treat something, but what's going on at the source all the way upstream?
Chemical to treat the effect of the chemical.
And you could go on forever, right? Which is what we kind of do in medicine.
Which is what we do, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's so beneficial, ACMOS, and such an incredible therapy. Now, tell us a little bit more about the Energy Medicine Hub that you created.
I started the Energy Medicine Hub in July as a safe space. It's a private group on Facebook for therapists and health professionals, and some therapists working in energy medicine, to come together and talk about their experiences. Now, everybody's still a little bit shy because it's quite a new group, and that's kind of what happens. So we've got hundreds of members now, and we're growing every day, every week, adding more and more people. In the hub, then I do some small mindfulness exercises. I've done some embodiment and fascial movement exercises, but most of the time I talk about ACMOS. And I was doing every week, and then every second week, and now every month, a live demonstration of a distance balance. And so someone in the hub would volunteer, we would set up the session, record it, and the recordings are all on there. So that we're building up more and more repertoire of practical experience for people. And that's the best way to really see what ACMOS is like in action, because we could talk till the cows come home and it doesn't make sense to anyone because it's not within their experience. So we have a frame of reference that we're used to looking through at life through that funnel. And so that's what we understand. And anything outside of that, we'll kind of draw in. But if something is outside of that, way over there, then it's kind of, well, I want to understand that more, explain it to me more, but you can't explain it in words as well as you can explain by showing and demonstrating. And so that's the purpose of the hub, is to show the world what ACMOS is about. And I'm interested in working with therapists, people who are able to establish a therapeutic rapport, who are used to running appointments, who are used to the human interaction side, who have anatomy and physiology background, who have a bit of psychology training so that they can support people, because often you will reach points which may be linked with people's traumas. So you can not speak about them and do purely the vibrational change. Or if that person starts to speak about in a session, then we're looking for a skill set in our practitioners to be able to work at that deeper level. So we can train people to do ACMOS in a surface level. It's not the right thing because it's never surface, always in working with a hidden level, where you can work with family and friends and sort of trusted clients. But if you want to really work at a very deep level with people, in the way that I work with people, then we now have a program that enables you to do that. And it's the aim is to get the right people into the program, because we need more practitioners and we need more teachers, because we're such almost a secret in the medical world. And that's for a number of reasons. Not least my own personal circumstances. My kids have only just left home. And so I couldn't go off to Paris 4 times a year, and India a couple of times a year, and go to the States and do lots of training, because I was a mother first and foremost. But now I don't need to, because the training is online. So we have about 80 hours of recorded material between the more in-depth deep dives that I've put together over the last year and a half, and the version of the course which was recorded in a classroom setting, which takes you through the training to certification level, but the deep dives take you to practitioner level. That's the difference. And there will be lives and question and answers and masterclasses and live balances within that group. So we're looking at really taking people who already have a level of skills and raising that up, and maybe taking them off in a different tangent and finding new horizons, but in a very supportive friendly. I want the numbers to be small. I want to know who people are, and I want to inspire people in the way that Dr. Rennie inspired me.
For practitioners listening, where should they go for both the Energy Medicine Hub and for that online training and to get themselves to a proficient level of ACMOS?
The Energy Medicine Hub is on Facebook. It's a private group, but you can find it if you put in the whole term, the Energy Medicine Hub. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, it might have been a mistake to have the "the" in there, but it's there. And if you would like to have a chat to me, you can book an introductory chat with me through my website, which is carolerobertson.co.uk. There's a booking page.
We'll add the links as well. And for patients interested in receiving ACMOS Method, where can they go?
That's a difficult one because we do not have enough practitioners. So I'm snowed under with work because when people look on the internet, they find me. And so I have people from all around the world coming to me. But we do have practitioners in the States. We have practitioners in the UK. We have just about a cohort of practitioners ready to roll here nearby in Scotland. And I plan to have them as my local team, and they will be a mentored team. So they will help me with some of my workload. We have practitioners in New Zealand and in Australia, in India, in Hong Kong. But because in the past, the requirement was to travel to Paris for support and for further education, then a lot of people trained and use it for their family and friends. They might measure their supplements, but they don't actually embrace the system in its wholeheartedness and its maximum capacity.
Yeah.
So that can change now because you do not need to leave home. You can train online. There's a lot of support available. We don't need to be in the same room to do that.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing you're doing because I know so many practitioners, doctors that came to our clinic, New York Center for Innovative Medicine, witnessed ACMOS happening and said, I got to learn this. And said, it takes a few years and you got to go to Paris. Okay, I don't think I could learn this. That's how the conversation goes. Yeah. And then you say, okay. And I understand that it's difficult and it requires a good amount of education, application skills, which, you said 80 hours you have of all this stuff available online and makes it so much easier. You don't have to get on that flight, go a few times a year, learn from, person in person and take that time to do that. And it's so much simpler this way. So I'm really hoping more and more practitioners jump on board because, again, it's so important of a therapy. And I remember, first witnessing it and saying, it's interesting. And then you experience it, and then you see patients with real problems getting better. And that was the one thing that changed possibly was that. And then you start to have conviction, and then you start to apply it more, and then you see it more. So for any practitioner that's really looking to take that next step and add something into their repertoire that's absolutely going to help their patients in tremendous ways, I think ACMOS Method is the place to start. There's hundreds of different therapies out there. Knowing hundreds myself and going through and being at those seminars with my father of so many of them, I could say ACMOS is probably number one on what doctors should be learning. So I really do hope more and more people go there. We'll add the links in. Anything else you'd like to add as we close this out?
So I'd say, given that it is a system of communication, as with any language, if your vocabulary is restricted, then you only speak a small part of the language and you only get a small part. So the reason for introducing the mentorship program is to improve people's vocabulary and skill set so that they become fluent in ACMOS. And the best compliment Dr. Rennie ever gave me as he took me and to the train on the Gare du Nord in Paris was he came out of the car and he gave my suitcase round and he gave me a hug and he said, I don't know what to say. You're not 80%. You're not 90%. You're 100% ACMOS. It was the biggest compliment that he could give anyone.
Incredibly fluent in ACMOS. Yeah, yes. You got the 100% proficient. Yep.
Yeah. So I see my legacy as sharing Dr. Rennie's legacy with the world.
Well, thank you
and
for doing that.
I'm excited to be able to do that.
Yeah, an amazing thing you're doing there and then teaching others and passing that down it is such an important thing to pass down, like, generational stories we have that we pass down, continue. And this is one of those therapies that I think is going to be a game changer. It's just getting started as to what it can do. And yeah, so many people can benefit from this. So thank you so much, Carol. Really appreciate you being on.
Thank you, Casper. It's been wonderful.